And this debate is Bartow County Sheriff, the incumbent Clark Millsap, and the challenger Dan Knowles. Again, our format for tonight for this race, opening statements, you have 1.5 minutes. Panelists will ask questions for 90 seconds with answers. For the candidates, you'll have 30 seconds to ask each other a question, and 60 seconds is the limit on answering the question if you choose to do so. And closing statements will be 1 minute. We have opening statements, and we'll start with Clark Millsap.
Thank you, Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the panel, folks listening out on the radio, I am Clark Millsap. I've been fortunate enough, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be your sheriff for the last 12 years. We've accomplished a lot at the sheriff's office. Some of the things we're really proud of, number one, is we've expanded the DARE program into the middle schools. We have the 4 middle schools in the county and 1 in the city. The jail expansion, I know you've noticed the monstrosity on top of the hill. We've completed the jail expansion, and we had 624 people in there this morning, so we're hoping not to fill it up anytime soon. Our drug task force is one of the greatest things going right now. We've got more officers on the road than we've ever had before, and those are just a few of the accomplishments that we've done. I could go on and on, but my time is limited. I want to thank you again for being here. Thank you again for listening. And I'd like to ask you for your vote and your support and your prayers on July 31st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Millsap. Mr. Knowles.
Thank you. I'm Dan Knowles, and I want to be your next sheriff. I moved to Bartow County when I was 12 years old from Rome. My dad worked at Chemical Products and worked almost 30 years there. My mom at the time worked at the Daily Tribune. I started at Cass Middle School and hated moving to a different middle school, because you know how middle schoolers like all their friends, and thought I would hate Bartow County. But I truly love this community. I married my high school sweetheart, Vicki Freeman, from Cassville. We've been married almost 24 years with 3 daughters, a son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. I graduated from Cass, and a year later went into the Army, and I still serve today between the National Guard or the Army Guard and the Air Guard, and have over 20 years service. I'm now a first sergeant at Dobbins. In 2008, I was deployed to the Middle East, and what a life-changing experience that was. For the last 7 years, I've been trusted to be the chief of police for the Bartow County Campus Police, and what a humbling experience that was to be offered that job, because realizing that I would be responsible for the safety of our future, almost 14,000 children. We also have 20 facilities that we take care of, and with those 14,000 children, 28,000 parents and 56,000 grandparents, and all the traffic to go with it. So again, I appreciate your support and ask you for your vote on July 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. And now we'll start the questioning from our panelists, and we'll start with Tom Chenal.
Thank you, Lee. Well, we'll go ahead and start with the number 1 question that seems to be on everybody's mind, at least coming from the panelists here and the media outlets that we represent at 1450 and the Daily Tribune. The question that we get asked continually goes to Dan Knowles. And who is Dan Knowles, and what qualifies you for this position?
Well, first time, it's good to see you all grown up. Remember you from church when you were just annoying all of us up here. Who is Dan Knowles? That's a good question. That's one of the things that people kind of, I don't say criticize, but say you have no name recognition. Well, in my job at the school, if I had name recognition, that meant things went bad at the schoolhouse. So not having my name out there every day is a good thing. But I have a degree in management, a BS in management. I have an associate's in criminal justice. I'm also been to the chief executive training that all chief of police go to. I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, from jailer to patrol to school resource officer, SWAT team, sniper. So yes, I can. If you're a hostage, just lean to one side. I'll get the bad guy for you. And but again, being the chief of police for 7 years, that to me that brings the experience to the table of supervising and managing, and not just I only have 5 officers, but I manage 20 facilities and almost 14,000 students.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Although the question was directed at you, Mr. Millsap, do you want to respond to that, or you want to tell us who you are?
Well, once again, I'm Clark Millsap. I've been your sheriff for 12 years. I've got 28 years of law enforcement experience here in Bartow County, serving the citizens of Bartow County, 12 of which was as your sheriff. I've got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from West Georgia College, which is the University of West Georgia now. I'm a 1985 graduate from Floyd Junior College Regional Police Academy, which is now Georgia Highlands. And I'm a 2000 graduate of the Sheriff's Elect Academy for the Georgia Sheriff's Association. And that's good enough.
Thank you. Our next question from Mike Garcia.
Thank you. You definitely don't know me because I just moved here from South Florida. And with that in mind, there's a little case called the Trayvon Martin case you guys might have heard of. And I'm curious to know what you guys feel. Should the stand your ground law be modified in Georgia, or is it clear enough for law enforcement?
Mr. Knowles.
Well, of course, that's a tricky case, and we don't know all the facts. We weren't there. It became a media sensation, of course, and my take on it is that the chief of police there stepped out too soon. He should have been up front saying, look, everybody calm down, here's the facts. Let's let the court decide this and not turn this into a media event. And now, the defendant is basically, of course, he's back in jail now on a bond forfeiture, but he was hiding for his life just because of the media and the hype that it caused. Stand your ground, I believe you have the right to defend yourself. Putting yourself in a situation is not necessarily defending yourself. I'm not saying that you should run every time, but if there's, just like we tell our students at school, if you have an opportunity to walk away, take that walking away rather than standing there and getting yourself into something you don't need to be in.
Mr. Millsap.
I'm a firm believer in our Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms. I'm also a firm believer in stand your ground. I also believe in the case that you're speaking of, it went a little bit farther than stand your ground. I think he might have went a little bit too far, but I'm not going to sit here an armchair quarterback. I don't know, as the chief said, I don't know all the details about the case or what was going on through everybody's mind when they were there, but yes, sir, I'm a firm believer in stand your ground.
Thank you. The next question from Jessica Lodi.
In previous commissioners' debates, the issue of drugs in Bartow County has come up. Last week, it was brought up that the drug task force, which has been spoken very highly of here tonight already, is self-funded and receives very little money from the Bartow County Sheriff's Office. Would you provide more money for the task force, and if so, where's that funding going to come from?
Mr. Millsap.
We'll keep the task force forever as long as I'm the sheriff. If we can find the funding to give them additional funding, yes ma'am, I'll be glad to. They are pretty much self-sufficient now with confiscations and things such as that. The city of Cartersville and the sheriff's office, we do provide some assistance that we can. The drug task force is very important. As you know, they're all federally deputized, so that if we need to take the case up to the federal level, we can. And the FBI, being a part of the FBI Safe Street Task Force, actually helps with their salaries also.
Mr. Knowles.
Well, of course, I'm in support of the drug task force also. I see the influence that drugs has on our kids every day. I do believe that we could fund it a little differently. According to the budget, the drug task force gets $2,000, and I totally also believe in the DARE program. It's funded at $35,000. They are self-sufficient, but I think we need to take those funds that have been seized or give them a budget up front so that those seized funds have time to clear the courts and everything before they're accessed, because it's almost to me like a conflict of interest. I've got to make this case to get these funds to be able to support ourselves. Let's get those support funds there first, and then let's say this year that they confiscate $250,000 worth of assets, then next year they would have $250,000 in their budget and let it roll forward like that.
Tom Chenal with the next question from WBHF News.
Well, since we've been talking about the drug task force and along those issues, it seems to be well known that, unfortunately, that Bartow County has an issue with drug-related problems. What progress has been made in the war against methamphetamine, and what is left to be done?
Mr. Knowles.
Well, the drug task force has been outstanding in that battle. We see every day where these guys are doing an outstanding job with limited resources. So I'm not going to take any of that away from them. I do see that fighting the meth problem is a multifaceted event. It's a business, just like you see. Remember, if you remember the McDonald's signs that say 50 million served. Well, there's 50 million folks in our country that have used their own meth. So it's more than just enforcement. You can't end up locking everybody up. You got to do it through education and other support services. There's even been, meth, and I'm sure everybody's family, and my family, very close to me. One of the best people I knew ended up on meth. Meth does bad things to great people. The best thing that ever happened was getting caught, but not serving that long sentence, but getting in that program, getting that support, and being free for years.
Mr. Millsap.
Tom, as you know, the Drug Task Force, I would stack them up against anybody in the United States of America. The training that they've been to, as far as methamphetamine, meth labs, just dismantling of meth labs and things such as that. The thing is now you don't get the local chef anymore. Nobody's really cooking meth thanks to all the new laws that have been passed. We have a great working relationship with all of our hardware stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware. If someone comes in and buys a large quantity of Coleman lantern fluid and it doesn't look like they're going camping, we've got a great relationship with everybody here, and they'll give us that heads up. We're using that information, and we're using other avenues and other resources to gather up information about people who may still be dealing. We get a lot of imported meth, if you want to call it that. A lot of people bringing it into the county. We're stopping that as best we can. It's a battle that's going to go on forever and ever. We'll win a few of the battles, but we may never win the war. But we're going to keep fighting for as long as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Millsap. Next with a question is Mike Garcia from WBHO.
Thank you. What are your guys' position on home detention and the use of ankle bracelets to monitor nonviolent offenders?
Mr. Millsap.
I believe in it. If the crime is not a violent crime, if it's something that can be monitored with an ankle monitor. As you well know, the jail's got, like I said, 624 in there today. We have a capacity to go higher. We don't want to unless we have to, but the ankle monitors do assist us in sex offenders and things such as that, people on probation, people on parole, the home confinement. If we can keep it with the new technology they've got, GPS and things like that, it's helped a lot. So I'm for it.
Mr. Knowles.
I agree with the sheriff on this one. I believe that for just one. I believe if with minor offenses or folks that aren't violent, that we can monitor things that way, because it does take the burden off the taxpayer as far as supporting them in the jail, feeding them, manning the jail, and so forth. So yes, all those out of the box ideas to lessen the load on the taxpayer.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jessica Loading of the Daily Tribune News.
The DARE program has come up, which is an educational program for our young people. But how would you expand education for the public in an effort to prevent or lower the crime rate?
Mr. Knowles.
Well, social media is the driving force in our communities today. So definitely through interaction with the community, through Facebook, websites, and so forth, and actually have community meetings to discuss, because you may not know, as the sheriff said, if somebody's carrying 5 cans of Coleman fuel into the house, you may not know that's significant to being a meth lab, or actually what physical aspects meth has on the body. So yes, it is good to educate our children, but we need to educate our other members in our community, because you may not know what's happening right next to you. And there's 100,000 people in Bartow County. That's a lot more eyes than the 200 or so law enforcement in this county. So we need all that community support and awareness to feed that information to us.
Mr. Millsap.
Education is the key, Jessica. Not too long ago, we had a Citizens Police Academy that we put on at least once or twice a year. We would love to start that back, and that's part of our future plans, hopefully. But due to budget restraints at the time, we were unable to continue it going. Officers had to come in on their off time, and we were having to pay overtime and things such as that, and it got to be a heavy load. But education is the main thing. Our DARE program being expanded into middle school, those kids that didn't come into the 5th grade can now pick up part of it in the 7th grade. So we're hoping, and maybe one day there's another program that we're going into high school, so maybe we can expand it up to that.
Thank you. The next question from Tom Chenal.
Well, Sheriff Millsap, you bring up the point about the Citizens Academy and the fact that it was, taken away there for a while due to budget constraints. If, brought back as sheriff, what will you do? What will be that process of how will you get it back to being able to use the Citizens Academy? And Dan, if you're elected, what will you do in order to bring back the Citizens Academy?
We'll start with Mr. Millsap.
Tom, what we're going to try to do eventually, and it's going to be a long, tedious process, is trying to find more money to put in our training budget. Captain Chenal and Lieutenant Newberry, they handle our training for us, as well as other instructors there at the Sheriff's Office. We've got to find enough money to put aside for materials, and hopefully somewhere, somehow, try to find some money. Whoever the next commissioner is maybe can find it in his pocket, I don't know. We'll try to figure out a way to fund it and keep it rolling. It's very good.
Mr. Knowles.
I too, Tom, believe in the Citizens Academy. That's all part of getting the citizens involved in what we do in law enforcement. So yes, I'd like to find the funding, whether it's through just manpower shifts or studying each department, see where we can find that from. And I'd also like to add, not just for a Citizens Academy, maybe once or twice a year having an open firing range for folks that have gun permits or want to have their children be familiar, to provide that service to the community too, for either through the county firing range or coordinate it through our guys who are outstanding citizens who own their own firing range.
Thank you. Mike Garcia.
Now, obviously, we were sort of talking about youth programs, and are there any other possible programs that I don't know if it really falls into the Citizens Academy, but for adults? Because I hear all the time, well, crime prevention starts in the home, and is there a way to get to parents to assist with that process?
Mr. Knowles.
But one of the things I've been promoting campaign-wise is to have monthly or maybe quarterly meetings in regional areas throughout the county so that we can have those conversations where they can say to me what their concerns are and, of course, play that back. We would show off what the Sheriff's Department's been doing, but to also, yes, give those tips and so forth. Another is talking about crime defense starts at the home. My daughter goes to North Georgia College, and they have a program with their security department where whatever valuable items you have, you can notate it and give them that form, and it'll stay on file in case things go missing or they get burglarized. We can do the same thing here. We can provide those forms, whether we would keep it on access, because I don't want to think anybody's violating their property rights by listing their property with us. But we'd be able to provide that information so that they would have those forms, make it simple. Here's my TV, here's my serial number on my TV, and file it away. Because burglaries are rampant throughout the county. And that's one of the biggest things trying to solve the burglary is we don't have the information on the items that were stolen. So if we could help push that and promote that to make the citizens keep those records and make it easy for both of us.
Mr. Millsap.
One of our biggest pluses here lately, after we had an article in the paper about our Neighborhood Watch program, is we've had an increase in people wanting Neighborhood Watch programs. Thank you, Jessica. That's one of our main things, is how we do get our education out there, and Sergeant Richie Harrell does a great job. Anybody listening, if you've got a Neighborhood Watch program and you want to get started, contact Sergeant Richie Harrell at the Bartow County Sheriff's Office. Richie, if you're listening, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're going to have to get busy. Richie will go through and he will explain home defense, he'll explain home safety, he'll explain, we don't put a key under a rock anymore. Everybody's smart enough to know that fake rock has a key under it. There's a lot of things that he will go, and using the Neighborhood Watch program would be one of the best ways, and we've seen an increase in requests for it.
Thank you. Tom Chenal. Or is it Jessica? It's you. Jessica Lodi.
The issue has come up that some of the smaller municipalities are not able to offer around-the-clock services to the residents. Is it the responsibility of the Sheriff's Office to ensure that these smaller cities receive police presence? And if so, how do you plan to assist these municipalities?
Mr. Millsap.
Absolutely. They are citizens of Bartow County. They live in this county. They have the right for us to come to plus the cities are in the county. If they need us, we're going to be there. Fortunately for us, we do rely on all the municipalities to police their own. But as you said, they're very limited manpower and very limited funding. We will continue to provide that protection that they're not getting. Fortunately, we have more officers on the road, like I said before, than we've ever had on a shift. And when they're going through that area, we do like to patrol and we do answer the calls, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles.
I can only ditto what the sheriff said. Those municipalities are in Bartow County, and as the lead law enforcement officer, it would be my job to protect those citizens in those areas also.
Thank you. Tom Chenal, next question.
Well, it was announced a couple of months ago that the local nonprofit organization Crime Stoppers was disbanded. If that is as that is going to be the case, if it's not already the case, how do you plan to continue maybe a such program as Crime Stoppers?
Mr. Knowles.
Well, of course, I'm a Crime Stoppers supporter. I even started my own reward program at a school I was at in Cobb County just before getting hired here. And actually, this school year, I received a teacher grant to open that again here in the school system here, doing a reward program. So yes, as sheriff, I would be pushing that. I'd be seeking that, asking for community support and business support, and even if it's manned as our own entity as opposed to a separate entity. I believe money talks, and people will come out and give you information for money. At the school I was at in Cobb County, I got a young man with a loaded 9mm. And the way that information came forward was two young students decided that they needed some money. It was coming up on Christmas break, and they needed some money. And I was offering $100 for any information on firearms. So they brought that information forward, and we were able to get that firearm out of the school. So yes, Crime Stoppers or any kind of reward program, I'm all about it.
Your response, Mr. Millsap.
Well, of course, I am a Crime Stoppers fan, and it was very hard to let it go. But I understand, believe me, very well about not having enough money to do the things that you need to do. We do have our tip line, our anonymous tip line. We've got that running. We've also got a Bartow County Sheriff's Office Facebook page and other social media that we're incorporating. To be able to find the funding would be a dream. Yes, it would be great. And I'm for anything to get as much information to solve crimes as possible. So I'm a big fan of Crime Stoppers. I hate that it had to go. And if we could find a way to try to fund it, I'd be all for it.
Thank you. Next question, Mike Garcia.
Thanks. What is your plan for mental health patients that are arrested and taken to jail? I mean, how do you know? Do you keep them there? Do you take them to the hospital? How do we know that they're getting treated the way that they should be treated?
Mr. Millsap.
Unfortunately, we're having to house them at the Bartow County Sheriff's Office due to the state lacking the funds to keep some of those hospitals open. Northwest Regional, the one in Cedartown. The closest one we've got now is we'd have to drive all the way to Augusta. We are trained to recognize mental health, mental handicaps, things such as that. We have probably the best medical facility that you can get in a jail. Our infirmary is state-of-the-art, brand new. We have padded cells, we have everything that needs, but as far as being able to treat them, no sir, we're not able to treat them. And that's what we used to count on the hospitals for. But due to budget restraints with the state, they had to close some of the local hospitals. So unfortunately now the burden has been taken by the county jails.
Mr. Knowles.
And like the sheriff said, it does put a burden on the jail. I read in the paper a couple of weeks ago about the state promoting a mental court along the same lines as a drug court, but sad to say, Bartow County doesn't have the funding to do that. You know, I see those same type situations in the school every day where we have kids with special needs where they have to receive those different services. It'd be nice to provide those the best we could, but as the sheriff said, budget-wise and system-wise and support-wise, it's just not there. So we have to depend on our own training and support those individuals the best we can.
Thank you. Jessica Loading with the next question.
If you guys will indulge me this question. As the press, as someone who helps make the sheriff's office open and available to the public. We often hear that the public isn't able to get information and they turn to us with their questions and their concerns. What would you do to make your department more transparent and available to the public?
Mr. Knowles?
Well, again, that's one of my campaign stances. I want it as wide open as we can legally have it. Budget-wise, that's an open record. Once a month or once a quarter, we'll post the budget and where it is right now. You know, on our have an interactive website. You want to know crime stats? It's right there. I kind of like Sheriff Joe's. If you've been to his website out in Arizona, he's got the inmate photo of the day. You know, where you can go and vote. I don't know what the person wins, but you can go and vote.
Bologna, probably. Bologna sandwich.
Bologna sandwich. two slices. But no, that whole information, just like I was saying with Facebook and such, and I'm glad to see that the Sheriff's Department has a Facebook page now that they started in January, and it has helped in a lot of situations. And that's the kind of things I've been talking about through Facebook and websites and Twitter even. You know, you can, we'll have you following the sheriff. You know, we'll tweet for you. So not literally follow.
Well, I don't tweet, so.
But yeah, any of that information, that we can legally have out there, we'll have. No hidden secrets.
Thank you. Mr. Millsap?
Well, Jessica, I don't know how much more wide open we can get than we are now. I'm proud of the fact that, contrary to popular belief, we do open it up for just about anybody and everybody, as long as it meets the criteria of what the law is. I've always prided myself that my door is always open unless I'm in a meeting or I'm not there. And contrary to popular belief, I am there 98% of the time. So I don't know how much more open we can be. Sergeant Rogers, he's our PIO basically, and he's got an email list probably 2 miles long of everything that we send out every day. So if they need anything, don't hesitate to call us. I mean, if we can make it available to you, we'd be glad to.
Thank you. Tom Chenal, next question.
Well, it's known that there is a new communication system that is being brought on board. Well, how will you work with other law enforcement agencies to ensure that this new communication system is on board and fully functional?
Mr. Knowles?
Well, I'm already part of that. We've been going at it for a couple of years now, going to what the feds are requiring for narrow banding our radio signal, because Homeland Security wanted their certain frequencies that we wouldn't interfere with. It is costly. You have to make sure you have the up-to-date equipment, because you just can't have one of your old radios sitting in an old car. It's not going to be compliant. And you'd hate for the feds to come knocking at your door and fine you for it. It requires new licensing. I am well versed in the communications as far as how everything works, because that was one of my first agenda items I took on as I came in as the chief of police for the school system. Every school was on a different type of radio. Some would go to Kmart and buy the family radios. They bought radios from different vendors around. You couldn't talk to each other. So I studied that and found the best way to do that already. Also in the current SPLOS, the whole county will be going to some sort of upgraded system anyway. And that's still in the planning stages, and it's going to take a whole team effort of all the municipal department heads and even mayors and councils and so forth to see how we can best supply that. Because do we go for infrastructure, or do we go for the radio on themselves? Is it building towers or just supporting what we already have?
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Mr. Millsap?
Tom, we've got two choices right now. Now, 2 years from now, when the SPLOS kicks in and we're able to make it may be something better state of the art. You've got an 800 meg system, you've got a digital system. There's talk now of a 700 system that may be kicked off in Washington. I don't know for sure. I've just read a little article about that. But the 800 megahertz system is very expensive. We've started this conversation back 12 years ago about eventually knowing it was coming, and we were going to have to do something. It was going to require adding more towers. The digital system, we've tested it throughout this county, and we're good with the towers that we have already. It's a lot cheaper. Now, is it going to be the thing we need 2 years from now? I don't know. But working with all agencies in this county, all the department heads, myself, and like the chief said, everybody else that wants to come and give us an earful, we're going to get everybody's opinion. We're going to take it out in the county. We're going to test it. We're going to see what the cost is going to be. The digital system, we took it all the way up on Johnson Mountain, way up there almost to Fairmount, and stepped off on a portable and could talk back to our base station here at 911, just like we were standing in the same room. So we're all going to get together as department heads and agency heads, and we'll sit down and try to figure out what's going to be the best cost effective we can get and what's going to give us the best bang for our buck.
Thank you, Mr. Millsap. And now this portion of the program, we'll let you ask each other questions. You have 30 seconds to ask a question, and if you want to respond to it, you have 60 seconds. And we'll start with Mr. Millsap.
I don't have any questions for Mr. Knowles. Thank you.
Mr. Knowles, do you have any questions?
I do have one. Let me go through my stuff here. Make sure I got on right. So for anybody taking notes, this is your time to take notes. Okay. So Sheriff, as you're probably aware, I've been submitting open records requests in reference to budget items of the Sheriff's Department. In my review of those records, I've discovered that you have an American Express card issued by county government, and you're the only person in Bartow County government to have such a card. There are 2 names listed on the monthly statements, you and one of your command personnel. In reviewing the transaction records since 2008, there are several items that have caught my attention. The account has been used for over $35,000 in purchases, which appears to be bypassing purchase order or requisition processes. I've noticed that there doesn't seem to be any quality control efforts in use of the card. A post-it note seems to be the approval. But real quick on my question, the one that really caught my attention was at the Cartersville Country Club, there were 2 charges for a total of $650. So my question is, how do you explain these purchases, and why should public funds be used to support that?
Mr. Millsap.
The credit cards that are used are in my name and in Major Gary Dover's name. We use those credit cards for things that can't be bought with a purchase order, that have to be purchased online or have to be purchased with a credit card over the phone. As far as the country club goes, I'll have to ask Major Dover about that.
Thank you. And now we have our closing statements. And we'll start with Mr. Knowles. You have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Well, I thank everyone for being here, and of course on the radio and the panel. I also like to thank my future employees being here, sitting over to the side. I am asking for your support and your prayers and your vote. If you'd have asked me 5 months ago, did I want to be sheriff, I'd have said, you're crazy. But things have changed. You know, I said if I wanted to run for sheriff, certain things had to happen, and those things did fall in place. And so I don't know if it was happenstance or the Lord speaking to me or something in my heart, but something told me to put my name in the hat for sheriff. So again, I ask you for your support, your vote, and your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Millsap.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, I'd like to thank you for being here, and I'd like to thank my future employees also for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's real simple. I think at the Sheriff's Office we have done an outstanding job. I don't mean to try to brag on us, but I'm going to brag a little bit. We've accomplished a lot. There's a lot more we want to accomplish, and I just want to continue to ask you for your vote, your prayers, and your support on July the 31st. Thank you so much.
Thank you.